Hey, Yim.
Hey, Rick.
So I've been catching up on my reading goal, and in doing so, I've been reading a lot of novels that are genre classified as dystopian novels.
Right.
And have unfortunately been finding too many comparisons between our current society and this quote-unquote dystopian novel.
Yeah.
Starting to get a little scary.
Yeah. There's this meme that I've seen.
Always with the memes.
Listen, I am chronically online. I will admit that. I am a chronic onliner. But I saw this meme about, people, like, it's talking about, like, current events that are happening in the world. And then if you guys have ever seen The Good Place, they are, basically the premise of The Good Place is it's supposed to be like heaven, but they consistently figure out that their good place is actually the bad place. And so the premise of the meme is like we're talking about all these current events, and it's the line that this one girl says a lot where she goes, as she's realizing, and she goes, "This is the bad place." And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little too on par.
On that note, welcome back, all you sibling people, to the dystopian novel. To the bad place. This is Sister Show Me How, a podcast, a place where we help you talk through all the real rough shit. I'm Riveting Rick, host of Sister Show Me How, and your how-to sister.
And I'm Emblem, co-host of Sister Show Me How, and your other how-to sister.
You know, Em, I've been thinking a lot on what it would take for us, our society, the American one, because we live in America, to actually reach a utopia.
Okay.
And obviously it's very complex.
Right.
But I thought that it would be fun today for us to go through like kind of a brain tank episode and just kind of collectively ponder what it would actually take for us to create a more utopic environment for our society.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. So the things that I wanted to focus on were what a utopia would look like for us grand scale. How we get there from where we currently are, and then also why we think, in our personal, humble opinions, why it would work long term.
Because we're obviously experts.
No, clearly. We've been here for almost 30 years now. We know exactly what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
We can fix all of society's problems right here on this podcast.
Yeah,
If only they would pay us and listen to our ideas.
Mm-hmm. Totally mean it.
We don't have big heads or nothing.
No.
Okay. Who wants to start? You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay,
I'll go
great.
first.
Let's see what your utopia looks like. Okay, so first, the grand scale picture, what's that look like for you?
So for me, what I imagine is no classism, no racism, no sexism, basically none of the bad isms. So get rid of those. So how do we get there?
Yeah.
I have a big old because fuck if I know, let's be real honest. But when I think about it and kind of brainstorm it, I think we're kind of on the right path. I think we're kind of getting there.
Okay.
Obviously, we still have a long way to go.
Right.
But I think if we keep growing, learning, and fighting back against these boxes that society puts us in, or tries to put us in, sometimes not successfully.
Yeah.
I think that that's a big thing, because I think where we get caught up with all of these isms is we're categorizing too much.
Yeah, that's fair. We're comparing between us.
Right. We're all humans, like,
Into
full
story.
stop, done.
Yeah.
We all bleed red, call it a day.
Yeah. Done.
I think we need to learn how to really coexist. And I don't just mean like everybody tolerates everybody else and like you kind of just all go about your little lives and your little houses and that's it. I really think that there needs to be more community. So kind of in a way we're going to have to step back, because I think as the world has grown and there's so many people, we've taken this, you know, especially in American society in these big cities, there's not a sense of community really. You are just one tiny little ant in the anthill, not talking to any of the other ants. And we need to talk more and work together more and have that sense of community, I think. I kind of wonder if maybe we get rid of money.
Okay. Or develop a universal money system.
Right, and have more bartering, you know, because right now we have this, that's part of, I think, how we get into classism, is we have these different jobs that pay different amounts, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but we need all of these jobs to make things go. Like we need construction workers just as much as we need the architect to design it. So, you know, we can't have one without the other.
Right.
So why are some people getting paid more than others? I just think it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, if we used money as more like a third party bartering system, it's like, okay, if you have nothing else that I want, then I'll take money for it. However, that's like a second rate what economy? It's a second-rate economy.
Yeah, I think it's more of, these transfers of goods and services rather than money is the end-all be-all, because I think that's also how we get into capitalism. And if you've watched any of our episodes, you probably know how we feel about capitalism, which is not great.
Which is not great.
And then I think that there's more focus on people's personalities, rather than the generalizations and stereotypes. So again, instead of being put into these boxes based on assumptions and what you look like and what your job is and how much money you make and blah, 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 there needs to be more focused, I think, beginning at like the school level. Everybody's put in these classes and all these classes learn the same thing. And if you're not good at one thing, then fuck you, you're getting a C and you're not going to pass the class. Bullshit type like that. We need to focus a little bit more on people's personalities and their strengths.
Yes.
Rather than just like standardizing testing and stuff and what everybody should know. And
it's a handicap, really.
Yeah.
Speaking of handicaps, have you ever read that it's a very short story?
Story? Are you having a stroke?
It is a very short story.
There you go.
It's by Harrison Bergeron. Or fuck, maybe that's the name of it. Pause.
All right, research, Rick.
Okay. Correction. The short story is called Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. And it is essentially his idea. In the story, they create a utopia by placing handicaps on everyone so that everyone is the same. It's essentially standardized testing, but for people. So like it fixates on this one family who is a man and a woman couple, husband and a wife, and the husband was really intelligent, and so he had a handicap. It was like headphones, I think, that sent like a penetrating wavelength sound, like a screeching on a time interval to disrupt his thoughts so that he wasn't any more intelligent than anyone else. And then his wife used to be a dancer, and so that she wasn't a better dancer than anyone else, they put weights on her legs and stuff. Yeah, it was a really wild thing, and it ends up being that their son is like part of he is Harrison Bergeron, and he was apparently so smart, so strong, so phenomenal of a human being that they put so many handicaps on him. And it essentially comes to this idea of like, even with the handicaps, you would be individualized because everyone would have different handicaps. So it's like, even in a space where you're trying to create all of these equals, you're still one, just torturing people.
Right.
And two, not creating an equal system because everyone has a different handicap.
Right. So I think that kind of goes to this idea of rather than equality for all, you need, I believe it's equity for all.
Yeah.
So instead of giving, either giving people handicaps to bring them down to like an average level, or giving people who are like below average, giving them a step up, what you need to do, there's a little cartoon depiction of it that I've seen.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, where it's like there's a tall guy. Yeah, they're watching like a baseball game or something, and there's a tall guy who's seeing over the fence, and a short guy, like a kid or something, that can't see over the fence. So in equality, what they do is they set up a box for him to be able to see over the fence.
But everyone gets one box.
Everyone gets one box.
But in equity.
In equity, what they do is they just make it a chain link fence so you can see through it, so nobody has to have any boxes to stand on. You can just fucking see through the fence.
Oh, okay. See, I saw a different one where it was equity was that the tall guy gets 0 boxes, the medium guy gets 1 box, and the short guy gets 2 boxes so they can all see over the fence.
See, and I think yes, that's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But I think what happens is because there's so many different handicaps, not really, but there's so many different things that people maybe need to overcome. We have so many different experiences as humans that what we really need to do is make the system so that it's more easy for everyone, regardless of your, whatever things are potentially holding you back.
Right.
So I think that's what people talk about with equity, is you want to make it so that it's just easier for everyone regardless, rather than having a system that you constantly have to make exceptions for, or kind of design these loopholes for people to get through, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like in the field of architecture, universal design, making sure that everyone can use the space regardless of their personal abilities.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that that's part of like going back to focusing on people's like strengths rather than just trying to make everybody fit into boxes. I think that that's potentially going to help. And I think that one thing that I've noticed with books and TV and stuff where they talk about, dystopian societies, typically the premise is that they started out as these ideas to be utopias, but what happens is they're trying to regulate so much and have everybody do exactly what society is telling them to do. And so I think one of the big things in my mind that would help create a better utopia that maybe would be more successful is this idea of like letting everybody pretty much do what they want, and like not having a bunch of regulations. The big thing is just like, as long as you're not hurting the planet, you're not hurting anybody else, the world is your oyster.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that Wicca is a utopia because their one and only commandment is do what thou will, but harm none.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Honestly. Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Yeah. So I think in my mind, with all of these things, kind of what is going to make this work is I want us to go back to nature and look at symbiotic relationships and have that be our human society. So symbiotic relationships are, for example, one I think of is like hippos and have this bird. Oh, I don't remember what the bird is called. But essentially it like lands on their backs and like eats the little like pests on it. And so
both of them
are benefiting from this relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think humans need more of that. We're getting rid of our symbiotic relationships with money and being so individualized and so separate. And so if we can have more of that symbiotic relationship where we kind of are relying on each other more, I think it's just going to build a better community.
I agree. Yeah. My grand scale idea also ended with why it works because of symbiotic relationships. So I think it's funny that we both came to this very same conclusion.
Nice.
However, my journey there is a little different.
Okay.
I think that the place that we need to start, overall, my grand scale picture is that we're one with nature.
Okay.
Right? So being one with nature would, I think, inherently get rid of all the same isms that you're talking about, because it would just focus more on the connectivity of it all and less on the comparisons and like the differentiating bullshit that like we think makes us special.
Create the isms.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think that the way that we get there is destroy the patriarchy.
Fuck yeah! Let's go! I love this idea. Keep going. Talk more. Say more things like that. It's turning me on.
Whoa, no. You said it. But in like a real sense, I really think that the idea of establishing a patriarchy, especially the way that it has exhibited itself in our society, has taken away a focus on the children. And I know that sounds rich coming from me because I'm Rick who hates kids, right? That's what everyone thinks. Just not a big fan of them. You know, they're gross and they're sticky and they...
Yeah.
That's so much grossness. But I think that because we're not focusing on the kids, we're creating toxic, maladjusted, shit-heel adults. And that's where I have the problem. Because in, for example, a matriarchy, we would fixate on the fact that children need to know how to make and prepare their own food. They need to know how to grow their own food. They need to know how to handle the house. They need to know how to maintain their emotions and manage their soul and ensure that their dreams are being taken care of. You know, it would just put more of a focus on human being rather than a human doing, which is what I think the patriarchy has established within our society. And that's why we're also disconnected from who we are, and what we're doing, and why we're doing it.
Yeah. So I think that's a great point. I think it also is, that I like the thing about human doing rather than human being, because it really is like from a very young age, we start going to school, and school is to prepare us for what? To be a cog in the capitalist patriarchal machine.
Yep. Yeah. So the next natural step, if we're going to destroy the patriarchy, would be to dismantle capitalism.
Fuck yeah.
Because I agree with you. I think that money has become an idol now. I will not say money is the devil, because it's not. It's just a vessel. And what we do with it either creates a god or creates a devil. Right. You know what I mean? Whatever you do with that power. It's just a vessel and that's it.
Right.
But we focus on the bottom line at all times. Like, it takes our focus from growth to profit. And that fixation on profit is what is legitimately killing us. Like, I wish I was being melodramatic here and saying that convenience is not a killer and and that the profit is not poisoning us, but they are, and that's just the truth of it.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
So if we're moving away from these, then I think one thing that will naturally fall away when we start focusing on people's needs is the relieving of greed.
Yeah.
And I think once we give people their basic needs, when we make sure everyone is fed, we'll make sure everyone has the capacity to do the things that they want, make sure that everyone is clothed and housed and cared for, then no one has the need for greed anymore.
Yeah. Because I think greed is also like, it's a very fear-based.
It
because
is.
A big part of greed is the thought of like, well, I need to have all of these things because even if you've never known not having them, you know of it And so, yeah, it's always this like you need to have more and more and more because you're so afraid of not having it.
Of having less, of not having the security of having whatever this thing is, money, housing, stuff, people, food. Yeah. Gandhi said it best. The world has enough for everyone's need. It does not provide enough for everyone's greed.
Yes.
And that's why he was Gandhi.
Yeah.
So then we focus on growth. When we focus on growth, what we're doing is we're reshifting our attention to the character rather than the capital. And I think that's where, like, that is where the biggest issue lies in what we're doing currently, is because everything is fixated on how much money can we make. And that's why we're not fixing climate change. That's why we're not doing universal health care. That's why we're not taking care of our people. That's why we're banning abortions and getting rid of, like, medical necessities and, like, you know, trans care and all of this shit, is because we're fixating on how can we manipulate and exploit the person to get as much money out of them as possible.
Right. Well, and it's even like that, the idea of careers and stuff. It's why we look negatively on people who don't go to college and who people who quit their career to do something different.
Right.
And it's why we say, oh, you have an art major, you're never going to make any money and shit like that.
And those are all fear-based bullshit as well, too.
Right.
And that's what our current society breeds. It's just a lot of fear. That's why the most rebellious thing that you can do in our current society is to be your most authentic self, because they can't profit off of you if you're happy and content and at peace with yourself and your soul.
Yeah.
And that's what they want to do. I think that the most practical, hands-on way that we start this is to fixate on the schools. One, they need a lot better public funding. Like, just across the board.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's just, like, if you look at America's ranking of schools compared to, like, most other first world countries.
It's embarrassing.
Oh my God. It's no wonder they make fun of us and think that we're all stupid.
Because we are.
Yeah. I mean, once we get to the college level, we do pretty well. I will admit that, like...
Depends on how much money your college has.
University level, not necessarily, not like community colleges necessarily, but university level, we're pretty decent. I'm not going to say that we're like one of the better places, like people are leaving their countries to come to America to go to university. That's not.
I don't think so.
I don't think so, unless it's something like Harvard, maybe, like one of the Ivy Leagues, but like pre-university, like secondary schools and elementary schools and stuff like that. It's laughable.
The public education is laughable.
Yes.
Yeah. Because now that I'm thinking back, like, actually we did have quite a bit of transfer students at the university level coming to America specifically for their university level. So whatever, I don't know. But still, our schooling is embarrassing.
Right.
And specifically when it involves to our children, our fixation has been, you're right, on standardizing testing and trying to normalize everyone. We're trying to turn every SpongeBob into normal Bob, and it's fucking weird and creepy, and it's getting out of hand.
Yeah.
And so I think that if we... Okay, so we're going to fixate on schooling, right? One, we need better public funding. Two, we need more outdoor learning environments. Yeah. We need more well-rounded topics and subjects to be integrated. Right. We need to go back to prioritizing how to live on the land, how to love the land, how to deal with being a human, right, and living the human experience. Like, right. I feel like our schools are fixating on shit that just does not matter. Sure, our history is important. I will grant you that. Math is excellent. However, is math more important than emotional intelligence? I don't think so. I genuinely do not think so, because I can't tell you how many times I can tell you how many times I've used the Pythagorean theorem. Literally 0 times since I've been out of college have I used the Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah.
You know how many times I've needed emotional intelligence?
Every fucking day.
This fucking morning.
Yeah.
Last weekend.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. 4 years ago. Every goddamn day.
Yeah. Well, and even just like practical things such as like how to pay your taxes.
Yeah.
Schools aren't teaching that shit.
How to participate in this society effectively.
Right. Like things like how your credit score works and shit like that. And granted, again, back on my Utopia, I think we should get rid of a bunch of that. But if we're
baby
going
steps.
baby steps of like, just teach people how to fucking do that.
Yeah.
Like, teach people about their credit cards and like that the fact that it doesn't matter if you pay it off every month if you're hitting your maximum limit, that's still going to take your fucking credit score. So,
and how those systems abuse you anyways, and like just ways to have critical thinking. There's just so many other things that I wish public education would fixate on that they are not.
Right. I really think that some of the like higher level like math courses and stuff like that really should be more elective, and rather than the electives such as like music or dance or whatever, which those are great too. There are absolutely value in those, but I think that you need more practical life skills being taught in school.
Yeah, and we need just as many like required musical and art courses as we do English, science, and math courses. Like, art should not be an elective.
No.
As with every subject, because there has to be a balance. There needs to be a base minimum. Like, everyone gets to a certain math level, and that's required. Everyone gets to a certain music level, and that's required. Everyone gets to a certain emotional level, and that's required.
Yeah.
And then from that point forward, obviously the individual should be able to choose what kind of path they want to divert more attention to.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not what we're doing. Again, we're turning all SpongeBobs into normal Bobs, and it's weird.
Right.
And it's not helping. And it's not helping.
No.
But I would totally understand if they were like real benefits from this. If our general population was not more anxious, more depressed, more uncomfortable, more neurodivergent because of all of the trauma and dirty brains that we have going on. But that's not what's happening. No. What's happening is we are more anxious. We are more depressed. We are more ADHD. We are more uncomfortable. We are more detached from what we should be, where we should be, and who we are. And that's where I have the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then it comes to like a more practical sense of like, how do we actually get there? Do we need to dismantle police and turn them into 2 separate units? I believe we do. I think that there should be a violent sector and then a non-violent domestic center. You know what I mean? Like peace officers and then cops.
Right.
They should not be the same unit.
Right. Also, cops should need way more than like 6 fucking weeks of training.
So much more training. You need psychological training. You need how to dismantle conflict training. And I know some of you get some of that like sensitivity training, but you need more of it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Police chiefs out there, if you're listening to this, please require more sensitivity training of your cops, because clearly it's not happening out there, and conflicts are arising and tensions are increasing and biases are multiplying, and these things are so problematic, and we need to be doing more to resolve the issues and just less hopes and prayers.
Yeah, there needs to be more training to, like you said, diffuse conflicts rather than, you just go in there guns a-blazing, because like a lot of these conflicts you can talk people out of if you have the correct training, but we aren't providing that, and that's a big issue.
Right. And as far as what you were saying with the dystopian novels, with like, I think the big point that some of those novels are trying to make is that when you try to control a population, because that's what they all end up being, is just control.
Yeah.
It ends up being like too much. But I think that we need more federal regulations and less local regulations. Here's my example. In the Reagan administration, he was able to actively fuck our current situation because he turned back some legislation, and you'll have to forgive me, I do not off the top of my head know what that legislation was, but what it did was essentially make it to where companies could monopolize further. They could invest and suck in other smaller companies under their big scale name. And it was essentially like this big loophole for companies to get bigger than they are. And I think that monopolization made it to where our local communities really suffered.
Right.
Because now the communities aren't making that local money. These big headshots are making our local money.
Yeah.
And so if we had more federal regulations like this, where it was like antitrust laws. I knew my brain would get there sometime. But yeah, if we had more antitrust laws, then it would be less likely and less easy. It would be harder for these people to fuck us in an economic sense, at least.
Right.
So I think some things like that, like if we had more federal climate change regulations, then less companies would be able to fuck us that way. You're right. When we go on a local level and we try to regulate everything, that's when we go too far. But there has to be a balance. And I think right now, federally, we're cutting it short, and locally, we're choking it. We're going too hard. You know?
Yeah. I think also, like, one thing about regulations, in my opinion, I think a lot of times what we see with regulations is like, this is what the punishment is going to be if you break this.
Right.
Or you don't follow this rule.
And it's always money. It's always a fine.
It's always money. And I think the other thing is we have seen, it's literally proven, like pretty much across the board, that if you offer incentives to do something that's beneficial, people are going to do that more. Companies are going to do that more, corporations and stuff like that. So I think if we take a step back from always just doing like, you did something bad, here's this punishment, instead be like, do something good, here is the reward.
And honestly, psychologists have fucking proved this multiple times over, and my brain is telling me Pavlov, but I don't feel like that's completely accurate. But it's like a reward-based center training, and that goes so much further than a punishment-based training.
Yeah, it's been proven.
It has been, and they don't do that.
No. Besides just psychologically, like there was, we were just talking about it at my job the other day, there was some bridge that needed to be, I think, rebuilt somewhere in California, that basically it was like the main transportation. And so they were trying to rebuild it, and they gave these companies these incentives. They were like, for every day that you were before the deadline, we're giving you however much money. And again, we don't love money, but the point is like they were getting these rewards, and they ended up coming in like weeks ahead of time because of these rewards. Whereas like when you say, oh, if you go this many days over the deadline, like we're taking this out of your paycheck or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been shown that like people, like they don't care. Yeah. They're like, meh, we can afford it.
Right. Or at least you're not going to get any benefit out of that, because then if the punishment is meet the deadline or else, then no one's coming in early for any reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you're right. I just think that is we're just shifting our focus in the wrong way. You know, we're trying to control people and then punishing them for not acting the way that we want, rather than encouraging people to act in a way that is beneficial to everyone involved, and then rewarding them for that process.
Yeah.
See, we figured it out. That's all you have to do to create a utopia. It's not that hard.
Benefits and rewards.
Exactly.
Easy peasy.
So at the end of the day, our sisterly advice would be to take a second and look into what you can do within your community to make your world just a little more utopic.
Yeah, we can all use more symbiotic relationships in our lives, so go find yours.
So chew that over and then come back next week so we can talk about what to do next. As for today, we love that you came to brainstorm with us. And as always, feel free to take what you need and leave what you don't. And join us in the next chat if you feel like it. Or take a break from the talk and watch us get some actual work done on our DIY channel, only on YouTube.
Also, don't forget to check out our other social medias. We try and post how-to guides and bonus footage from our previous episodes. And while you're there, why don't you let us know what's going on in your world? we want to help.
After all,
That's what a sister's for.
Bye, guys. Okay, ready, Freddie? Are we recording? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm someone.
And I'm Emblem. Yeah.
Emblem.
Emblem?
Emblem.
Emblem?
Whatever. I don't know. Whoever you are. Who are you, Em? Who are you? Who are you really?
I feel like about like a phlegm.
Me too. Stuck in my throat.
Yeah. From the fucking donuts, probably.
Probably.
Okay. Let me see.
Kurt Vonnegut? Vonnegut?
Vonnegut? Vonnegut? Vonnegut, maybe? Something like that.
Vonnegut. Okay. Okay.
Vonnegut.
We heard you. Right? We focus on... Whoa, that was terrifying.
Fucking hell. Okay. That scared the shit out of me. I was like, did somebody just throw something through the window? Like,
Right?
what the fuck happened?
Okay, so tip to future Rick and Em, putting the battery bank on top of the phone is not a good idea.
No, let's always use a long cord.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck. We could all use a little bit more. Fuck.
Join us next time. And join us in the next chat.